Welcome, my dear friends. It's fantastic to see you. Welcome in. In case we haven't been introduced before, I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I perform dramatic story readings, I provide role-playing game and movie reviews, and I get to talk to interesting people. And in this episode, we're going to continue reading the writings of an interesting person. That would be Dungeons & Dragons co-creator Gary Gygax in his book on the role-playing hobby, Role-Playing Mastery. So far, we've talked about what are role-playing games, what makes a good game master, what makes a good player. And in this episode, we're going to get into kind of Gary's take on the worst player types, on evil DMs, and group dynamics, because we are entering into Chapter 4, The Group, More Than Its Parts. I found it very interesting. Hope you do too. Group operation and cooperation are at the nucleus of any RPG activity. This fact should be obvious from the rules of the game, even if it is not explicitly stated within those rules. Despite this, many longtime participants in a single RPG system do not truly understand or appreciate the interrelationships of the varying approaches to the problems posed by the game system, or to the dynamics of a group that is balanced and works well as a team. At the other extreme are novices who instantly grasp these facts and attempt to put their knowledge into play. If the two opposites happen to comprise the same group, or a part thereof, sparks will surely fly. Mere time and experience at play do not make expertise. A veteran soldier is not necessarily either a good tactician or a master of strategy. Because role-playing games are group-oriented, and ongoing play and success require cooperation, the other player participants must be regarded as friends, or at worst, allies, until one or another demonstrates otherwise. The general subject of the group can be divided into 3 subtopics. The group composed of all participants, including the game master, referred to here as the playing group, the group composed only of players, or the player group, and the characters being portrayed by those players, or the PC group. This chapter deals primarily with the first and second types of groups. That is, the actual people who are interacting with each other as they play the game. Some advice on operation of and cooperation within the PC group was given in Chapter 2, because the subject directly bears on any attempt to become a master player. Other observations on this third type of group are given in this chapter where appropriate. As with the discussion of the game master in the preceding chapter, much of the following advice about group dynamics is expressed in negative terms or in the form of danger signs to watch for. When everyone in the playing group has progressed to the point that none of these danger signs is evident, then you can be sure that all the participants have taken a giant step along the path to mastery. Group interaction. To understand the nature of the playing group, let us first consider the basic types of gatherings that are typical of RPG participants. The regular veteran playing group is most desirable. If you are seriously interested in the play and mastery of role-playing games, it is absolutely necessary to engage in frequent and regular exercise of role-playing with a skilled GM and players who are as enthusiastic as you are. A description of this group would include individuals with the following characteristics. The game master is dedicated to providing fresh and challenging problems in an imaginative setting to a group of players who appreciate this effort. The players are uniformly interested in the genre, have a sound grasp of the game rules, understand roles in role-playing, and function as a cooperative entity in order to succeed both as a team and as individual PCs. Furthermore, the players also are like to themselves be or have been game masters. Each participant may have several characters that will be played as individual PCs or as player character associates, henchmen, assistants, or whatever at different times. The players are peers, but not necessarily age group peers. That is, they have common interests or experience at playing the RPG. If they are also age group peers, then the group will have an even stronger bond and a very high level of dynamism. The major drawback to belonging to such a playing group is that the group will tend to develop its own dynamism to such an extent that it will develop rules, variants, and play methods that tend to isolate it from other groups. These groups are also in danger of becoming insular. To counteract these trends, the members must actively seek contact with both similar and diverse groups, add new individuals to its body, if only on an occasional but regular basis, and maintain contact with the whole of the RPG community. The fragmented veteran playing group is basically the same group just described. The difference is that the GM and players are unable to meet frequently on a regular basis. The game master might hold irregular meetings with only a few or even none of the regulars. The regular players might be found playing in other, less desirable groups because of their inability to play with the fragmented veteran group. The players might well all serve as GMs regularly, by force of circumstances, even though they are more proficient as players and enjoy that form of participation more. The participants of such a group will certainly bring much to those outside it if they continue to be active. The problem is that members of fragmented playing groups tend to fall out of regular gaming unless each is able to find or establish a regular play group. Failing this, the group will lose its members, with only one or two actively playing or game mastering. The balance of the people will join them on rare occasions, but as an entity, the group has disappeared. The enthusiast-driven playing group contains at least two really enthused RPG players. One or perhaps two of them will serve as game masters. These enthusiasts attract casual participants who make up the remainder of the group. The regular GM will be pleased to have the one or two dedicated players and will show this. The balance of the participants will tend to drop away and may or may not be replaced by other casuals. What happens to such groups is that the enthusiasts are willing and or able to play more frequently than the casual members. The GM caters to this desire, for it matches his own needs. The one or two dedicated players quickly outpace the other players, their knowledge and expertise become greater, and their PCs become stronger than those of the remaining players. Casual participants feel excluded and lose interest. If it is left alone, this group will soon become very small and insular, or else the core, the GM and the one or two enthusiasts, will split and join larger activity groups. This sort of group can be saved, and it often is if the GM understands the dynamics at work. Rather than allowing the casual players to feel excluded, the Game Master will encourage them to attend, will make special arrangements so they can play in sessions that do not include the enthusiasts, and will offer assistance, instruction, and example. When the enthusiasts are part of the group, the GM restrains them from dominating play. Contributions by casual players are given as much approbation as those made by the enthusiasts. In short, the GM, and possibly the enthusiasts as well, recognize that it is desirable to educate the casual players. From such a group, a regular veteran one might be built. Peer group participants tend to be school age. One or more of their number acquires a role-playing game, and the others become players to continue social activity with their friends. This sort of group closely resembles the enthusiast-driven one detailed earlier, and it might well become such a group, with peers being replaced by fans of RPGs. On the other hand, the group is as likely, perhaps more so in fact, to terminate when the GM loses interest and moves on. Because peer groups are large in most cases, their dissolution tends to leave a number of enthusiasts stranded. These enthusiasts would enjoy play but are unwilling or unable to initiate it through their own activity. Of the remaining members of the peer group, some will eventually find or found other groups, while the others simply drift away to other hobby or sport activities. Club gatherings are the last type of playing group that we will consider here. The members of such a group are either peers or former members of groups that have dissolved. Club groups are centered on a place, either the residence of one of the members, usually the GM, or a sales outlet for role-playing game products. Longevity of the former sort of club group is dependent on the GM. Without the place to meet and the services provided by that central member, the club disappears. The other sort of club, centered around a sales outlet, is subject to frequent changes in membership. The burden of providing the place to meet falls upon the owner or proprietor of the sales outlet, who might or might not be a member of the club group, which means that participants, particularly GMs, are relatively free to move in and out of the group as they please. As this happens, the dynamics of the group change, and the game activity tends to fluctuate. Since all role-playing games require play group input and group creativity, the participants are vital to the game. This is because they actually create much of it, for each and every group must devise some of the material needed for ongoing play. Then as play sessions continue, the interaction of PCs and GM with the rules of the system builds further creation. The regular veteran groups experience this to a high degree, the other groups on a lesser basis. Just as the play group develops the game, it builds its own mythos and a subculture within the game system. There are tales of triumph and tragedy, genius and low humor. Heroes emerge, treacherous acts and their perpetrators are vilified. Places gain legendary status and certain characters do likewise. Game terminology and past adventures lend material for the group to develop its own patois. Friendships and camaraderie, possibly not felt outside the group or not shared beyond its confines, are experienced when the campaign sessions are in progress. Time before and after play is filled with discussion relating to the game. The dynamics at work in such groups build toward a high degree of involvement with the game, its expert play, and an inadvertent elitism. Newcomers, or those who do not share enthusiasm for the hobby to the degree of the others, feel excluded. The enthusiasts usually react by becoming more removed from the others, emphasizing their dedication and expertise. This is usually because they identify the difference between themselves and the less enthused as indifference or rejection on the part of the latter persons. Often it is simply ignorance, inability, or diverse interests that separates these members. Thus, gamers who are seeking mastery will analyze the group in which they play and act accordingly. To build mastery, regular play is needed. To avoid insularism and its attendant incestuousness, play outside the regular group is desired. Furthermore, new participants and fresh ideas are most beneficial. What to do? If you are a member of a regular veteran group, the matter is simple. Do everything possible to strengthen the viability of your association and enjoy the benefits. Such people tend to develop into masters through their constant play and enthusiastic participation outside their own group. The major problem facing such groups is variance and isolation. These difficulties can be overcome rather easily if desire and information are available. There is nothing basically wrong with the development of special methods of gameplay by the group, but these differences should be identified as such and looked upon as superior only insofar as play within and with the particular group is concerned. With respect to other sorts of groups, the would-be master GM must exert himself to make them into regular veteran groups. This is done by accommodating new or less skilled participants in order to encourage and train them. It is also helpful to seek new recruits and be willing to accept them as part of the group. This sharing will bring enjoyment to others and at the same time will help assure the continuity of play the dedicated RPG enthusiast desires. Personal sacrifice by the enthusiast, possibly in the form of stopping one's involvement as a player in order to serve as GM and lowering the level of play to accommodate less well-developed PCs in the campaign sessions, will be well rewarded in the future. All the foregoing is necessary to understand and work toward. Development of mastery subsumes a large and long-term investment of time and effort. Without a group, such investment is wasted. With a superior group, the investment is bound to bring returns quickly and in far greater degree. The fortunate participant will have a group of associates as eager to explore and learn the game system as he is. Such an individual will be able to select a PC based solely upon his own desire or whim without difficulty, for the group can accommodate this. In fact, the other members will be doing much the same from time to time, testing new approaches of play through special scenarios, different PC mixtures, and other like activities. The marvelous thing about a pursuit of mastery is that it is not work to the true enthusiast. The exercise is enjoyable and entertaining. The members of a regular veteran play group engage in activities of an exploratory nature as simple extensions of fun, perhaps not consciously realizing that this is one of the most important parts of gaining expertise in the field. Better still are those hardcore groups whose members are well apprised of all aspects of RPG activity, are active in them, and are seeking mastery as a group. However, at this time, associations as devoted and dedicated as this are too rare. Were it otherwise, a work such as this would hardly be necessary. As a player, your analysis of your player group must direct your selection and attendant play of a PC. You desire to facilitate your learning and the learning of the other participants as well. New player groups need balance in the composition of the party that will engage in sessions. Those who can be counted on to appear regularly must have complementary PCs. You must assist the group in achieving this balance through suggestions or through example by how you select and develop your own PC. While in a veteran group, an irritating, disruptive, or parasitic character might actually enhance interest and develop expertise for all concerned, such a PC is most undesirable in other types of groups. Thus, in a group of novice AD&D game players, for instance, a party of 2 fighters, a magic user, and a cleric would benefit more from the addition of another fighter or cleric than a barbarian or an illusionist. The first mentioned classes are among the basic professions offered by the game system, while the last 2 are subclasses or specialty types. By its nature, a barbarian, a subclass of fighter, or an illusionist, a subclass of magic user, would be more difficult for a novice player to cope with. If such a character was included in the PC group, that character and its player would either tend to dominate the GM's attention, or else would be quietly relegated to an inferior role in favor of the basic character types that are more easily managed. Obviously, neither of these situations is conducive to balance in the player group or the PC group. At the other extreme, when all the players have become expert regular veterans, A disparate and seemingly hopeless mixture of PCs, a barbarian, a magic user, an illusionist, and a bard, for instance, would probably be a welcome challenge because it would stretch the participants' knowledge and abilities into new and greater areas. Even from a purely selfish standpoint, there is ample reason to allow group needs to strongly influence your decision-making process in the choice of a PC. Each player will, at least, be interested in amusement. Some will be actively seeking enjoyment on an ongoing basis. To a greater or lesser degree, personal factors, self-worth, will be part of each player's goals and motivation. Approbation and success are desirable to everyone. If your PC brings more fun to the play session, assists in gaining approbation for all, and contributes to the success of the group, then you will be given rewards of both a personal and a game-related nature. Thus, you will enjoy yourself more, and your PC will be made more viable for ongoing play. Several examples will be helpful. A character with powers or skills unique to the group will always become a focal point for approbation if these unique factors are applied beneficially to the group activity. For instance, recall the example in Chapter 2 of the character with the ability to heal wounds and what was said about the proper way to use that character's skill. If he only heals some characters and excludes others, that character and that player will not be popular with every other member of the group, regardless of the group's general need for a character of that sort. Sharing of knowledge for the benefit of the other players will be recognized, especially if the individual so doing politely points this out. If you are one of the more experienced and accomplished members of the group, the sacrifice of some of your PC's cherished possessions, or even the character itself, is sometimes in order to preserve another individual's standing or the viability of the group. A newcomer or a casual player cannot deal with this sort of loss the same way an expert or master player is able to. This might mean your loss of a PC on which you have expended considerable time and resources. Yet failure to do this might result in group dissolution and the attendant loss of all play opportunity. Just as contributing to the player group tends to assure its continued existence, assisting other players of equal or less expertise than yourself has a direct bearing on you. Such help will at least be returned at some time. In particular, less skilled players will begin to look toward your PC and you as a mentor or heroic element of the group. With such benefits, the reason for RPG participation is broadened as this occurs. Problem players. A problem player, or more than one, may surface within a player group, particularly when the group has just been formed and is going through its own particular breaking in process. Although the obvious manifestation of the problem is in the player himself, the root of the problem often lies in how the GM views his role in the playing group and how he conducts himself and the play sessions under his control. To put it another way, if the GM is or appears to be willing to let players get away with certain actions and types of behavior, then a player who was so inclined to begin with will certainly take advantage of the opportunity. If the game master is a novice or tends to be weak in his direction of the players, difficulties can arise. If the GM is unwilling to take effective control, one or more of the participants must then do so, meanwhile encouraging the GM during non-playing time so that authority will be vested in the proper party as soon as possible. Following are brief descriptions of the various types of uncooperative players and suggestions for what must be done to cure the maladies they bring with them. The bully orders other players or even the GM to do this and that, threatening to take it out on PCs or actual persons if his demands are not complied with. Group pressure is the surest and perhaps the only way to stop this behavior. Everyone must make it clear by telling the offender directly and simply that he must quit his bullying or else he'll be excluded from the group. If some in the playing group are hesitant to take direct action, the superior player will have to attempt to handle the matter alone or in conjunction with any others of the group who desire to maintain a high standard of gaming. Ignoring the instructions and demands of the bully, followed by rebuke and eventually even PC confrontation to eliminate the obstreperous player's character, must be steps that the superior player is willing to undertake. So you see, even Gary Gygax endorses killing off asshole players' characters. The know-it-all is a form of bully who tries to assert dominance and control through a blatant display of superior knowledge. This player always rattles forth a stream of quotes from the rules and tells the other players what he thinks they should do. While a master player readily shares information, a know-it-all tries to use his knowledge as a control mechanism to dominate the group. Handling one of these sorts is usually rather simple when the know-it-all really doesn't know it all. Generally, the others should follow the steps for elimination of a bully. However, what if the individual is correct most of the time? The problem is then one of personality and social acceptability. The superior player must then personally draw the know-it-all aside and attempt to reason with him. The result, if the offender sees the light and mends his ways, could be a master player. Understanding of the group, the need for individuality, and the right to personal expression that belongs to each and every participant must be accepted by such an individual. At that point, the know-it-all becomes a sagacious expert to whom the group will look for advice and counsel. The advisor is a restrained know-it-all who does not broadcast his knowledge, whether actual or not, all the time, but still finds it irresistible to put in his proverbial 2 cents worth at every opportunity presented by others. And it usually isn't worth a fraction of that. Refutation of obviously foolish advice will serve to silence such individuals in most cases. After 1 or 2 times when the offender's obvious inability to offer worthwhile instruction has been demonstrated, the entire group should be brought to the stage of development that it can collectively silence such an individual permanently. However, sometimes such advisor types are more often right than not. In this case, either they need a more advanced group to participate with, or else the majority of the other players are lazy and are allowing the advisor to do their thinking willingly. Personal discussion with the advisor and careful assessment of the group are necessary in such a case. Forming an alliance with the individual, with an understanding that his silence will help build self-reliance and a higher level of play within the group, might prove profitable to all in that you and he can work together effectively to strengthen your PCs, while the others in the group benefit from the necessity of forming opinions and making decisions on their own. The cheater isn't so brave as to try to bully the group, but he is so self-centered and insecure that everything he performs, affects, or acquires, from dice rolls to character possessions and abilities, must be monitored. Otherwise, the whole group will suffer, for the cheater is seldom a capable player. As was pointed out in Chapter 2 in a different context, cheating in an RPG is similar to cheating at a game of solitaire. In the latter case, though, only the individual is shorted. The cheater in a role-playing game affects the whole group, and so such an individual must be forced to change or be eliminated from the group as soon as the fault is seen. Public attention to each discovered instance of such activity should shame the cheater into acceptable behavior, or else he must be asked to leave the group. If no others will join in ridding the group of a cheater, the superior player must take the responsibility. Even though it is properly the duty of the GM, a player can also protect his group in such circumstances. Allowing a cheat to remain in the group is a tacit acceptance of cheating, and the esteem of the others for the game will suffer if the practice is allowed to go on unchecked. The powder is an insecure cheat and bully in combination. This sort of individual cares nothing about the group, and he would probably bully all or cheat to have his way if he had the courage. Usually such thoughtless persons cannot be reasoned with or changed. They'll argue and be disruptive, refuse to participate, and try to spoil the fun for everyone else. When this occurs, the superior player must immediately take charge for the moment. The group should be encouraged to continue play, ignoring the pouting member completely. If the behavior is a tactic left over from childhood days, the group will penalize the activity merely by having fun without the powder. The offender will then either modify his activity thereafter or else quit the group. If he is determined to spoil the game, then he must be asked firmly but politely to cease the pouting disruption or behave in such manner elsewhere. The last example of a problem player to be considered here is the talker. These folk come in 2 distinct categories. The first is a sociable sort who merely wants to converse with his friends at every opportunity. Granted, he is selfish and inconsiderate, but he doesn't usually mean any actual harm to the game. His activity, talking, is a far greater meaning to him than the game, for the play is simply an excuse for socialization. Such a social talker can be corrected by interrupting him to call attention to the play at hand. Assuming that others in the group desire to play and chat with each other only in the context of the game activity, then the talker will end up either going to a tavern or social club for his gratification, or else turning his attention to the reason for the group being together in the first place, the game. The second sort of talker is more difficult to handle. He is the sort who has a lack of knowledge or skill, is insecure about this, and believes that his deficiency can be concealed by chatter. Often he'll try to show that his acting ability is superior, and use theatrics and over-dramatization to cover for his lack of knowledge and playing skill. Both types of talkers possibly can be dealt with by requesting silence, encouraging play instead of prattle, and interjecting meaningful suggestions for direct game action. In most cases, however, the entire group, or at least the majority, must display disapproval, or else these individuals will rattle on, convinced by the lack of complaint from others that their monologues and posturing are appreciated, or at least not resented. Even the best of playing groups, which are either not handicapped by the just described problem players or are able to solve those problems, will sometimes contain individuals who simply are not compatible. This can cause hostilities among PCs or among players, or in both venues. Even if they're able to restrain themselves on a player-to-player basis, unskilled players often allow emotions to affect their participation. If two players don't like each other, this antipathy may be expressed through words and deeds of their game personas. Since this sort of contact is almost always out of character, considering that PCs in a group should be working together, the conflict is easy for others in the playing group to recognize. If conciliatory measures do not work, then one or another of the hostile players must be removed from the play group, or at least they must be separated so as to avoid having both individuals at a play session. If the game master seems unaware of the problem or unwilling to take the proper measures, then the players involved in the conflict must use their influence to see that the GM solves the problem. Sometimes players of superior or better skill can cope with player versus player hostility that manifests itself in conflict between PCs. In fact, the additional challenge posed by this factor might actually enhance the excitement of a play session if the players are all mature and accomplished. Nevertheless, such internal strife usually is unacceptable on a long-term basis. In addition to situations involving people who have trouble getting along with each other from the outset, there are hostility situations that develop over a period of time. These most usually occur when players are at a relatively unsophisticated level of play. Friction commonly starts when the actions of one or more of the other PCs within the campaign are seen as being hostile toward the character of another participant. There is an emotional reaction by the put-upon player, and a feud begins. Logically, the hostilities between the PCs involved would not extend beyond those particular game personas. For example, Smith and Black are antagonists of Jones, all three being particular characters played by game participants. But the actual players themselves do not have and do not develop any hostilities toward each other. They role-play the antagonism, they do not live it. Superior players begin to approach use of role-playing and personal dissociation to such an extent, but those of less experience and skill will not. Even though the latter type of hostility can often be handled and kept in its proper place by mature participants, it is undesirable. Not only does PC versus PC hostility lessen the chance of survival of all the PCs, but the tensions created by antagonism of this sort must be felt by the playing group, regardless of their best efforts to contain and isolate the conflict, and the group's enjoyment of the game is reduced proportionately. In virtually any imaginable case, personality conflicts of any sort must be recognized and resolved rapidly in order to maintain the viability of the playing group. The problem GM. Now that we have gone on at length about problem players and problems among players and how to deal with them, it is time, high time, you players might be saying, to address the game master's proper role and responsibility within the playing group. This topic was touched on in Chapter 3 because working well within the group is crucial to becoming a master GM, but the subject deserves a more intense and extensive look. The game master should derive his satisfaction from entertaining the associated group, from testing them and seeing them succeed, and from the approbation they give him in return. But it is possible that through lack of maturity or because of some personal insecurity, the game master might view the player group as hostile and or as a vehicle for his personal attainment of self-enhancement through denigration of the player group's worth. Such circumstances are extremely difficult to overcome, and the individual who evidences these traits is probably not ready to tackle the job of being a GM. Maturity comes, if at all, through age and experience. Perhaps the experience of general rejection of the attitude demonstrated by an immature game master will bring a rapid development to the transgressing individual. Being faced with a shape up or will ship out situation might cause the individual to revise his attitude and express himself in behavior patterns that are acceptable to the player participants. That is hoped for, but not generally expected. Again, usually the only cure for such behavior is time and the maturity that comes with the passage of years. Another undesirable and potentially disastrous situation is that in which the game master regards the other participants as mere puppets. In such a campaign, the players will be used to build the ego of the GM, who relishes his position as arbiter and controller so much that he loses sight of, or never even gains sight of, the real reasons for play of the game. Clever puppeteer GMs might actually limit themselves to acting this way toward a select few in the group while treating the others more or less the way all should be treated. If anything, this sort of puppeteer is worse than the one who treats all players with disdain and disrespect because he proves by his comparatively fair treatment of part of the group that he does know how he really ought to be acting. This kind of attitude can spread like a cancer through the playing group If the players who are being treated properly feed the GM's ego even more by supporting and approving of his actions toward the downtrodden ones. No campaign containing such participants can exist for long. The reasons are obvious, and I'll not deal further with the subject. A new campaign must be had, and that suffices. Even those game masters who have the right attitude toward the player group as players still must beware of spoiling things for the group by treating the player characters in an unfair or inappropriate fashion. Before going further with this point, I must acknowledge that some game systems are designed to allow termination of PC continuity without termination of the campaign milieu. In such game systems, new PCs tend to spring full-blown into the world, powerful and ready for a wide variety of problems without the usual gradual acquisition of knowledge and skill. Such games are convenient for the GM with strictly limited time, groups whose component players are likely to vary widely from session to session, and for those who are unwilling or unable to make long-term commitments to the development of game personas. Game systems of this sort are actually not common, but the method of game mastering used by some people would make one believe otherwise. What I'm getting at here is a phenomenon called the killer campaign, something that even a GM with the best of intentions can precipitate if he is not careful and does not have a strong sense of the scope and spirit of the game. In this kind of activity, the GM thinks nothing of putting unbeatable foes and insurmountable obstacles before the PCs at every turn. The result, of course, is that the PCs are killed or so severely incapacitated that they are no longer viable. But this is of no import to the killer GM or to the players who meekly or ignorantly tolerate his methods. After all, new PCs are a dime a dozen, aren't they? No, they're not. The killer campaign basically defeats the principal reason for becoming involved in RPG activity, for it eliminates the vehicle via which participants gain ongoing satisfaction, their PCs, which are created and which exist so that they can be developed and nurtured. Unless the game system is specifically designed to accommodate dime a dozen NPCs, and as pointed out before, this type of game is not common, then anything even remotely resembling a killer campaign is simply not the way to play. At the other extreme is what we will refer to as the easy reward campaign, which is not as immediately or as obviously contrary to good game playing as the killer campaign, but is just as great a perversion of the game and just as likely, in the long run, if not sooner, to lead to the dissolution of the playing group and the campaign. In this sort of activity, the GM desires, or is talked into, keeping players happy by lavishing wealth, fame, and power upon PCs, giving rewards in grossly ridiculous proportion to the effort the characters expended or the accomplishments they achieved. All of us would admit, I hope, that what is gained through planning and effort is more satisfying than what is unexpected and unearned. Still, the easy way, as they say, is attractive on the surface. If a GM is easy, how can players resist taking undeserved rewards from a too willing hand? Taking this a step further, what about player groups who pressure reluctant game masters into giving rewards that are too great for the effort and success demonstrated by the PCs? Worst of all, the easy reward campaigns are those in which the play sessions are actually run by player groups who browbeat the GM into allowing changes in the rules or alteration of the game system spirit in order to facilitate the player's self-gratification urges and ego tripping. It is academic whether the fault for such a campaign lies with the self-interested players or the weak-willed GM who condones their behavior by allowing it to continue and to pervert the campaign. In any event, the playing group has a severe problem that must be recognized and addressed by all its members to avoid what will otherwise inevitably occur. When one has uncountable wealth or immeasurable power, each increment of that wealth or power is practically valueless. The gain of $100 is a great boon to someone who only has a small amount of money to begin with. But what difference does a measly 100 make to someone who has millions in his vaults? The player group in an easy reward campaign eventually loses interest at a point when further acquisitions mean little or nothing to the members, but usually before their characters have achieved anything of real significance. Play ceases, and all the game campaign's participants have lost their investment before it could bring proper returns to them. The GM who bows to player pressure has not only lost his investment in the game, but he has probably lost the respect of those who were associated with him. Even the players will be likely to feel a loss of self-respect for what they did. In the case of the player group whose thirst for power and glory, as it were, causes them to force a perversion of the intent of the role-playing game upon the GM, and possibly others as well, the results are the same, but there is a reversal. The campaign ends with the game master having lessened respect for the players, along with loss of self-respect to a lesser degree. Participants on the player level will have lost much of their self-respect, with lesser loss of regard for the GM. What a shame for this to happen, when avoidance of the errors made is so relatively easy a matter for thinking and caring individuals. Mastery is group success. Mastery requires individual effort and group operation. It is recognized by the group initially and is broadened through the efforts of the group. The higher its level of expertise, the greater the merit of the recognition. There can be no question that the degree of ability demonstrated must be higher if the group as a whole is superior. The analogy of a champion professional sports team is apt. To be a member of the team indicates an unusual degree of excellence. Without the other members, no player's talents could stand forth because the sport requires a team. Recognition for the team comes when it succeeds in championship play. For the individual, it is augmented by inclusion on all-star teams and in a Hall of Fame. While RPG enthusiasts do not have the same monetary incentives as professional athletes, and their play is strictly for the sake of the game, the analogy is otherwise most applicable. It is interesting to point out that mastery of the subject might also bring additional reward. While the role-playing game hobby boasts no professional league and no customers who pay to see people play, RPG activity does offer some financial rewards for masters who are willing and able to exert themselves further. There are small tournament prizes to be gained. There are periodicals that pay for articles and stories that appeal to the gaming audience. There are firms that employ persons with knowledge of the subject. And yes, there are publishers who pay fees or royalties for games and other works relating to role-playing. Whatever rewards you seek, all that might come are based on the play group. As a member of this team, you must know how to invest your efforts to enable the team to become more successful. As you pursue individual excellence and strive toward mastery, you must always bear in mind that it is possible only through your interaction with your RPG group. Your entire investment in the game genre, your survey of the field, selection of a topic, study of the rules, and application of what you have learned should be used to benefit the group. By knowing how to assist the group, you increase your own abilities proportionately. In turn, the group assists you in furthering your knowledge and enhances your skills. As you assist it in moving upward in expertise, it carries you along. The synergism of the group is integral to mastery. Assuming that a group does not contain any problem players and is being overseen by a GM who is running a rational and reasonable campaign, then how do the members know if and when they have achieved some measure of success in group cooperation? It is not easy to attach values or labels to success in an RPG activity, since there is no scorekeeping as such and no universal, totally quantifiable standards by which success can be measured. However, success in a group context can be defined, and the best place to begin with the definition is by delineating what does not constitute success. As was alluded to in Chapter 2, some persons erroneously believe success to be indicated by the high status of their player characters. In a similar vein, some game masters think that if their campaigns have a large number of such inflated characters, this is a mark of their own success. By and large, neither standard is correct. Success is defined in the following ways. If we accept the obvious truth that not all the members of a group can achieve the same degree of success at the same time, then it follows that one player or one PC realizes some degree of success before others attain that level. This happens when the group gives recognition to the player or one or more of that player's PCs through reliance upon him during play sessions, at first, and then through the telling and retelling of tales relating to play sessions that featured the individual's PCs. The second stage of success is reached when the player's or PC's accomplishments are so noteworthy that the GM also exhibits reliance upon the player and engages in the storytelling activity. The third stage of success comes when the group develops several players who are outstanding because they are all the objects of reliance and the subjects of tales and stories about their exploits and achievements. When any player group reaches this stage, the limelight spreads out to encompass the GM. If not for his ability and patience, the players would not have been able to achieve what they have. Thus, the third stage of player and player group success is also the first definable stage of success for the GM and the playing group. The next stage of success is reached when the players and GM participate with successful results in gaming events outside the group. Tournament play, as well as publication in amateur and professional periodicals. Success in the context of tournament play is a different concept from success in the group endeavor, since tournament success can be measured, at least in relative terms, by assessing the performance of the players and GM in comparison with other tournament contestants. Unsuccessful participation in a tournament is not a disgrace. Few players or GMs achieve top results in their first exposure to such activity. But the next stage of group achievement can only be claimed when at least most of the members are experienced and accomplished enough to place well consistently in tournaments. Similarly, few persons who desire to be published in gaming periodicals get a manuscript accepted on the first try, but perseverance and the continual increase in knowledge and skill will usually pay off. The highest plateau of group success comes when at least one of the players or the GM of a group receives general acclaim throughout the segment of the hobby interested in the same form of RPG in which the group has become highly proficient. No matter what one may think of his own prowess, and it may be great indeed, there is nothing to compare with the respect and admiration of one's peers. If you are one of the hard-working and fortunate few who become known and renowned among the rank and file of those involved in a common activity, then you, and by a well-deserved association, the others in your group, have made it to the top of the mountain. And that was Chapter 4. So how does that stack up to your bad player lists and bad DM lists that you've seen on other sites? I've seen a number of ones that I like, and I'll drop a few in the description below in case you want to check them out. They're mostly Seth Skorkowsky. I really like that guy. But boy, howdy, I could make an episode just on my thoughts about this chapter. Well, for example, making player characters that rely on the "it's what my character would do" crutch to be a jackass to the rest of the players and their characters. There's ways around that. It's a game. Never forget, this is a game just like Monopoly, just like cards. It is a rule set for people around a table to engage in mutual play. So have a good time with it. For example, in the current campaign that my program observer is running, I'm playing a racist elf. He thinks that not only are elves the top of the pecking order of the races, but of elves, his is the best. And he's a cleric of a sad boy, angsty, mean, bitter god. So while I'm the only one with healing spells in the party, and could easily justify withholding them from the rest of the group who are either not elves or refuse to honor my god, I could roleplay that way and screw them all over, and then they would screw me over, and I'd be left for dead or murdered in my sleep fairly quickly. No, I find accommodations for that. They all get access to my healing, but I make sure to berate them either behind their backs to the others or to their face for being inferior in what they are. So in game terms, I'm still fulfilling their need that my character can provide, and they look out for me, and the "it's what my character would do" part is just left for flavor. Materially, I'm not harming any of my party members. So if you're being a jackass to the rest of the party, or if you're that thief that robs from the other party members when it's your turn on watch and they're all asleep, screw you, buddy, because Gary just detailed why you shouldn't be doing that. You can screw everybody outside the group that you want, but in the group, it's a cooperative game. Make it that way. Be there to help each other have a good time. You can be as morally revulsed at each other's characters as you want, but you are a party and you need to act like it. And boy, he didn't know about enthusiasts and fakers coming into the industry and just to get free bucks, likes, clicks, and sweet simping cash out of the role-playing game hobby. A lot of these people, top shelf. Really great stuff that even I, who considered myself something of a master role player because I had read this a long time ago when I came upon them in the YouTube and other social media spheres, even I found value in what they had to say. And I've learned a lot from them, just as I had to learn from someone else. So boy, the times they are changing. So my dear friends, what are your thoughts on this chapter? There's so much to talk about. I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments below, and I do read them all and respond to them all. Unless you go down a really weird rabbit hole, then I'll just thank you for being here and not pick a fight with randos on the internet. Don't forget to like and subscribe, share this around, add this to your playlist of the worst players and the worst GMs you got. And my dear friends, that's what I've got for now. So until next time, I wish you nothing but the best.